So, if you could just state what your name is and what you have to do with the book Secret Identities, that'd be great.
Should I look right into the camera?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Keith Chow, editor-at-large for Secret Identities, the Asian American superhero anthology.
And what is Secret Identities? Why should Asian Americans be excited about it?
Sure. Secret Identities is a groundbreaking comic book. It's the first Asian American superhero anthology. What that means is we got 66 creators from all backgrounds, artists, writers, actors, filmmakers, playwrights, and they came together to create 26 original short stories that are all illustrated superhero stories. Why should Asian Americans be supportive of it? I think the reason we did comic books, if you look at comic books in the American popular culture, they kind of seed other forms of media. The top grossing films, highest rated television shows, they're all based on comic book properties. So we're trying to break into the mainstream popular culture zeitgeist with our own superhero stories. One of the things that prompted us to do this book, a lot of the top creators in comic books are Asian American. Folks like Jim Lee, Dustin Nguyen, Greg Pak, they're all Asian American. So we figured, why not get some of these creators together with others and create our own Asian American characters.
So, can you give a sense of, so when you were growing up, what kind of superhero did you want to see?
Sure. Oh, it's interesting. We're all comic book fans, the four of us editors, myself, Jerry Ma, Jeff Yang, and Perry Shen. We all grew up as fanboys, so one of the impetuses for doing the book was to see characters that look like us, because all of us, when we name our favorite superheroes, we all, none of us name an Asian American superhero, because one, there aren't that many, and the ones that exist aren't that cool. So we wanted to have the opportunity to make really cool characters that are all Asian American, so that our children, when they get older, could name, an Asian American superhero. For example, myself, Perry, and Jeff all had children while we were doing the book. So, in a sense, this book is for them, so that when they grew up, they would have superheroes to look up to.
So who's your personal favorite superhero?
Well, when I grew up, and still to this day, my favorite superhero is Batman. I've always been a Batman fan. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's the only superhero that doesn't have superpowers. He kind of wills himself to be a superhero. And he's got a cool costume. So
it's kind of dark, don't you think?
He's very dark, and I like that. I like the dark, gritty superhero.
So you got a secret dark side to you?
Maybe that's what it is. I have this dark side that I'm trying to keep tamped down.
So in terms of, do you think there's a correlation between Asian American presence in visual arts and in media and our kind of emergence as a political force in the United States?
Yeah, well, I think all art is political, number one. And, in a sense, we are making a political statement with this book, because what we're saying is that Asian Americans are, relevant. We're taking it from a popular culture standpoint, but like I said, you can't really separate art from politics, because we're making a statement that Asian Americans are heroes as well. Throughout the history of popular culture, popular media, not just comic books, Asians are always cast as the villains and not the heroes. So this is our way of saying that, that doesn't have to be the case. And some of the stories in the book are very overt politically, I think. We take, for example, actual historical events like the internment of the Japanese Americans. There's stories about that. There's stories about the fighting for 42nd. There's stories about the incarceration of Wen-Ho Lee. They all form the basis of a lot of the stories in the book. And we also do a teacher's guide, in fact, that's going to be available online that explores some of the issues that we bring up in the book.
That's fantastic. Do you think, shows like Heroes with 3 Asian American male characters, how do you think that influences the portrayal of Asian American men in media?
Sure. Well, I think one of the things, one of the subtle things I think with our book is that the whole idea of like masculinity. When you think of like superheroes, they're hyper masculine in a sense. Like the clothes they wear, the costumes are skin tight, and so that's another subtle statement I think we're making by saying that Asian American men as the superheroes, that's kind of the reasons maybe you don't see Asian American superheroes, right? So, but making a comment on that, sexuality or the hyper masculinization of you can't emasculate a superhero, right? The whole point of superheroes are like hyper masculinity. On the flip of that, though, is that we have a whole section of female superheroes as well, and rather than accentualizing or exoticizing their femininity, we kind of, female superheroes in the book are all regular women. So we're kind of making 2 separate, commentaries, not necessarily overtly, but just subtly about like how men and women are depicted in comics, specifically how Asian men and women are depicted in media.
Are you familiar with the work of Linda Barry?
Yes, I am.
So it's interesting to me because, let me try and formulate this as a question. I kind of think that my hypothesis is that Linda Barry kind of portrays like the antithesis of a superhero, like a very average individual, and that this is kind of what her work is. It's like the anti-hero and elevating the anti-hero to being the protagonist.
Sure.
So it's the kind of idea that anyone could be a hero.
Yeah, and we do that. We do that. There are several stories in the book that do that. Not just the female hero stories. We have a whole section called Just Ordinary that are about like, because I don't want to mischaracterize the book that it's all like these rippling muscle, men in tights. Some of the stories have that because that's a convention of superhero comics. But some of the stories are just regular people who happen to have superpowers, kind of like that hero's, what would it be like if superpowers existed in the real world kind of thing. And some of the, what I think we're trying to illustrate is just trying to look at the Asian American experience, but using the superhero lens to look at it. And one of the influences I think is just if you look at a lot of like superhero conventions, like the secret identity, the whole notion of being the outcast.
Right.
I think there's just some, a lot of resonance with the Asian American community. We draw this parallel, for example, with the Superman story. He's this alien from a faraway land, unlike our own, dark hair, thick glasses. He's mild-mannered in his day job. He's kind of shy around the girl he loves, but secretly he has this, powerful identity that people don't necessarily realize when they see him on the street. And there's some parallels with, I think, some part of the Asian American experience. Another parallel, if you look at the X-Men, they're these outcasts that they're shunned for their abilities or their appearances, but then they come together in a school, and then they find others like them and discover their secret heritage, their special heritage. There's some relevance for like Asian Americans who go to college. Like for myself, I was from a small town in Virginia, the only Asian family in town. Was ashamed of who I was. Went to school, met other Asian Americans, formulated our own like activism. Kind of like the X-Men. Had I focused my
joined together. Your powers became more powerful.
Exactly. I learned to control the force beams that shot out of my eyes, stuff like that.
So, what's the website for folks who want to find out more about it?
Sure. If you want to find out more about the book, you go to www.secretidentities.org. We're also on Facebook, MySpace. You can find us on YouTube. We have little motion comic videos that illustrate some of the stories in the book as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Meanwhile.